Jakarta for the very important topic today and tomorrow and in 3 days, because this topic is very useful for us as a coaches. So I hope we can enjoy and we can have a lot of knowledge with Dr. Ralph Mubahani, who are experts in biomechanics, especially for athletic. Now we will learn about the sprint for the biomechanics, and you know that our sprinter in South and Southeast Asia is difficult to develop, but we have good news for last 4 years that we have some good sprinter, but we still struggle to develop after in one level and still cannot be run under 10.0. So that's why we need to see with the scientific aspect and with the biomechanic. So that's why we invite Dr. Ralph Mubahani to be with us for 3 days. And I do hope you can take a lot of things from him, and we can use it in this daily working as a coach for us, and will develop our, not only the athlete, but also our knowledge. So that why everything will be managed by the knowledge, by the science. And now I think a lot of application in our mobile phone, for example, for helping us to have a good biomechanical analysis. But of course, we need the background under this application. So that's why we invite Dr. Ralph Mubahani to help us to discuss about the biomechanical principle. Okay, I thank you very much for Dr. Ralph Mubahani for coming in our board, and please, the time is for you, Ralph. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ria, for the introduction. Thank you for having me and for inviting me to talk about biomechanics and the influence of biomechanics in the world of sport, and here in specific in athletics, and in more specifically in sprints and hurdles. I will start the introduction by first doing a statement. I think what we need to understand, meanwhile, is that technology has basically, or is basically taking over. We've got in every walk of life, we've got technology. Technology has been, you see here now that sort of course or webinar we are doing, which is purely technology. We have other parts in life where technology, where types of, to keep it simple, I'll just use the term machines or anything similar, records, registers, and collect data, or you can, when you've got remote controls, it's technology. So anything which has been, and the sport has not been spared of all this development. So I once asked, I said, is that development of technology, is that a curse, or is it beneficial to us? Is it a blessing? And when we talk about technology in sport, we have to be aware that we still, first of all, there are two things. Collecting data, as I said, is not of a problem anymore. When you see the watches, you see the phones, the smartphones today, you can collect data as much as you want. That is not the problem. The problem is to understand what to do with this data. What is this data telling you? What are you basically apt to extract from this data, so that then you can make use of it in your daily routines of training, in your training sessions, in improving the quality of your training, in guiding the process of the development. And that is the most important thing, because if you abide purely by the technology, by the science of it, you will be lost as well, because the science doesn't know in which environment you're coaching, your training, your athlete is performing. It just tells you this is the data. So these are certain facts. But then to relate these facts to what you're doing, to what you're planning, to what you would like to understand from what you've seen, this is when you'll have to start to understand the basics of this data, to understand what are you measuring, what data are you collecting, what data, where does this data come from? And I think this is something which which unfortunately, when you observe in the landscape of sport, which we lost a little bit connection to. We have not been able to sometimes to integrate this properly in our educational process, in our education system. We have not been able to tell coaches, athletes, for example, what benefit can you take out of this data so that you can then improve or to even make life easier for you. We are working in coaching since years and decades with assumptions. We do not know everything. We cannot know everything. But what we have been able to do now in the past decade, in the past 2 decades, so in the last 20 years about, is that science which has developed, technology which has developed, is giving us now information about things which are happening, which we assumed only, which we thought they are the right way to do, where we hoped it was the right way to do, but we didn't know. And now we've got the data, and now we have to relate both things to each other, so that then at the very end, we are able to make a difference. I will start now the presentation in going first into some basics. You are the first guys to see some of the information which is part of the new level 2, because I thought it makes sense. You might know that that World Athletics is changing the coaches' education certification system. It's not changing it in a sense. It has been developed. It has been readjusted for many reasons. Some are okay, understandable. Others is the way it is. As I said, sometimes you have to succumb to certain developments. It has as well, because of the development of the technology as well, we have to take into consideration how can we make use, again here the same as I've been introducing, how can we make use of the technology we've got in our courses, and then has anything changed in the event groups because of the collection of the data, because we know more now than we knew before. So how does this affect the coaches' education? And you might know, or you might have maybe guessed, we were not, at least I was not very happy with what the coaches' education had delivered up to now. For all this development we were in, and for all the coaches we have developed, we still have a lot of gaps. We still have a lot to catch up with. We still do not reach everybody in such a way that coaches which are on the ground are able to make use of that information to their benefit and to no one's else's benefit. So I will share my screen now, and I will do an introduction, hoping that you must tell me if you don't see the screen, okay? So are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So this is why I left everything the same. I didn't change anything from the background. This what you see here now is partly, as I said, partly part of this and is material which has not been released up to now. It will only be released by end of the year probably. Much of it will be digitalized for certain reasons, and others will be used for course when you have got course with presence, where you will have, as you know them all from that coach's education. So what do we know? What do we understand? Let me know. First of all, let me do it differently. Do you guys have phones available with internet?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let me quickly go here. You will see here. Let me see. You will see here. You see on the top. Can you see on the top? There is a website, www.menti.com, and there is a code. So you go onto your phone, download this www.menti.com. A window will open, and when this window opens, you key in this code. So it's for free. Don't worry, you won't be charged for anything. And then you will see this, what I see or what you see here now on the screen. You will see a slide with this question. So what I want to know from you, and you will be able to key in here basically what you understand or what you believe biomechanics is, or how important you believe biomechanics is for what we're doing. Okay, as coaches, do you believe is biomechanics important? Is that something which can help us in our daily work with athletes, in developing athletics? Ria has mentioned it. By the way, Ria, you are not the only guys who still have no sub 10 runners. We don't have as well in Germany. We did not manage to get anybody under sub 10. So we are still amongst the countries which are struggling to get sprinters under 10 seconds. Why does this? What is related to that? Where is the difference? What do others do? What we might not do? What happens maybe in other countries or in other federations which opens up that window, that opportunity to go sub 10? Is it related to what? So what you can do, once you've got now on your phones, you've got that window open, you can key in. Then it will appear, it will pop up here on the screen here. You will see that it will pop up here on the screen, and we can see it and read it. So I will give you, exactly, see, all right. Here we've got already the first, and it is completely anonymous. So I don't know who has keyed this in, so you don't need to worry. It's just about to get a bit of a brainstorming of collection of what you guys understand when you hear biomechanics, what you believe biomechanics is, what you believe, or whether you believe if biomechanics can support and help and assist in what we're doing. So I'll give you a few minutes so that we can collect a bit of terms. So we've got 5 who have basically contributed to what we see. We are, I think, over 20 now, so at least that we get at least 50% having keyed in something so that we can have a majority, or can have an opinion about the participants which are on the course, what you guys believe. So it's not about me, it's about you. And I will try to put some sense to it. And hopefully you will be able to take something out of it, as Ria has said as well, to your benefit, to be able to develop sprints in your country to new levels. You can only key maximum 2 terms in. Once you have keyed in twice, you won't be able to key in anymore. It's because I have to limit it so that we can. And I see here now that we have 7 people who have contributed basically to what we see here. Okay, while you are still keying in, as I said, I'll wait a little bit. I will just give you some further information. When we make use of biomechanics, we have to know from a principle point of view or understand basics of movement. It is so crucial because if we don't understand basics of movement, we will not be able to analyze and interpret data collected or information data might hide behind this figure you are seeing. Okay, you will see now within the presentation why and what are the reasons. Okay, you've got it here already, understanding the movement. You've got here force or force application. I will just interpret it now. Center of gravity, I would believe that you want either, if you mean the center of gravity is yes, is how gravity is basically working as a force, as a parameter, and influences afterwards what we do, or center of mass, which is then linked to force application. Okay, this function of movement here, for example, is why certain things, and that's what I've been telling you, what do others do who have sub 10 runners? Why? Why does it happen somewhere else? And why doesn't it happen with me or with my athletes? Are you able to solve issues, matters, problems in such a way that you will get a development? Efficiency and fluidity, these are very interesting because you will hear them again within my presentation. The quality of movements which are linked with fluidity, with efficiency, with technique, okay? And now if we go and extend it with what is priority? What do you do when you do sprint training? What is the main focus? Where is your biggest attention? And you will see why I'm using all of this, okay? The importance of information we collect, which I would interpret you with biomechanics as important, is to understand quicker, faster what is going on, so that then we can act and react to certain things which are happening. All right? Yeah, it's becoming interesting. Talent ID is, I will be very provocative now. Yes, certainly by collecting data or by getting information from certain movements or from certain physical efforts which have been done, you can no doubt identify or at least get an impression about that person. What is even more important when you have talent ID, when you talk about talent ID, is you're creating a profile of that athlete. You are creating an image so that you understand who is that person that I am coaching or I should be coaching, or I am presently coaching at a certain level and want to take him to the next level. All right. So with this talent identification, don't use these to punish people, to say good, bad. Try to understand first, why does these things happen? What is that profile that that person has set up through data you have been collecting, and what does it mean? All right. So we're getting now more and more information here. I will just come back now I will go back to my presentation. Okay. All right, here I'm back to my presentation. So to come to what we've been talking. So what you've done and what you've said is, for example, when you talk about efficiency of movement, you're talking about core stabilization. You're talking about certain postural and repositioning of body parts. Okay, and you see here under the subtitles what is in the information you are giving. Why is that so important? It is important because what you see and what you measure are facts. The guy, the person, the athlete who is exercising doesn't see himself, but he needs a feedback. If you say, try to improve this movement, you've got something in mind. So you must basically articulate this to your athlete. It must come over as a message. And when you want core stabilization, because the body position or parts of your body position are not satisfactory, what do you tell that athlete? That could be one information, drawing or brace, to get that whole posture in place. When you want to reposition, when you say draw in, what do I mean? Well, I mean that I've got a tight belly or a tight tummy. I've got a relatively flat back. Or when I talk about leg movement and butts and hip position, what do I see? Okay, I see a hip. Well, I see the position of the hip. The position of the hip, depending on how it is, it has a straight effect on how force is transmitted. So these are all parts which are extremely important to understand how that mechanism works. Okay, and how do then techniques change? So you see here, that is what we've been talking about. Butt tucked under. This is a butt tucked under position. This is out of position. Okay, here you will see that the leg goes underneath that alignment. Whereas when you are in the gray area, you lose this ability. All right. So vertical alignment and force transmission are crucial for hip position. Okay, for core stabilization. Once we understood this from a basic point of view, then we will create an image. So what are we looking at? We are looking at that when we are on the ground and producing or applying force, you have to see that a person grows, gets taller, gets high, lifts the center of mass. Okay, so works against that gravity that is pulling him down. So depending on where you apply force, either this will happen or it won't happen. And if it doesn't happen, well, then it has effects on the technical model. It has effects on the performance which you're creating. All right. So different positions of the body will affect what technique you will be applying and why you're applying that technique. All right. So why is that? It's because all of it is linked to certain laws. And these laws, which you all know from your level 1 or your level 2 or whatever level you have done, all right, from the previous educational system, these laws, as long as they have not been proven wrong, they are the ones which we have to rely or to refer to. Okay, so one law is that law of acceleration, where force is applied, okay, and in which way this force is applied to get acceleration out of it. If I put more force into the body, into the ground or into the resistance, does this give me what I want? To be able to get taller, to run tall and faster, to cover more distance. If we go into the jump gun, whether I get airborne. In sprints, when I get airborne, I lose basically control of forces because in the air, gravity is working. There's no force application anymore, except that gravity will pull me back to the ground. All right, so understanding this, meaning I'm working with force, I'm working with the mass, and hence I get a vertical or a horizontal displacement. And in sprints, when you had the world record of Usain Bolt, now back 2009, that means close to 13 years on August, I can't remember now the exact date, but when we had the World Championships here in Berlin, where I am based, okay, he has used more or less between 41 strides. So 41 strides, meaning he had a certain stride length and a certain stride frequency. But that is Usain Bolt has a certain height. He's tall, close to 2 meters. We've got another guy, Tyson Gay, to take another extreme, which is short, relatively short compared to Bolt. How does this change? How does this mass and the force application work on him? What does it mean? Can he run the same stride length? So by saying, oh, Bolt ran on his world record, he had a 270 stride, 2.70 m stride. With every stride he was doing, he was in an average at 2.70 m. This is why he only used 40 to 41 strides to cover the 100 meters. But is that 41 strides, is that the parameter? Or is it the acceleration, the speed which is developed once force is applied into the ground and moves that mass forward? Tyson Gay was lighter because he was shorter. Usain Bolt was taller and hence heavier. So how does this affect? Does this affect in any way? And if not, well, what am I measuring? What am I taking out of that information? It is easy to say, do a longer stride. What does it mean? What means do a longer stride? What are you referring to? What you mean probably by saying what you want to refer to is you want to reduce the number of strides. But when I want to reduce the number of strides, do I have the ability and capability? If I'm not 2 meters and I can't run at 270, well, how can I compensate that? What will let me compensate that? It's the velocity, the speed, the center of mass is traveling through the air. So the horizontal displacement, to be able to do a horizontal displacement and not have the braking forces, I have to lift that mass. So I cannot carry that body weight. I have to support that body weight. How does this work? Through force application. Well, where, when, at what point in time? Okay? So that is extremely important because that will tell you then whether greater force will give you greater acceleration or whether smaller mass with the same force will give you greater acceleration. But if you do strength training because you want more force, you want more strength, to put it in a jargon of coaching, and you do that strength training in increasing the mass, you're back to square one. More mass means more weight, more force to more weight means same acceleration. So where have we got now? We turned in circles to come back to the original. Okay? So here we go, and that is what we need to understand. So if I do strength training, I want more force applied to the ground, and I don't want to change the mass. Yes, then I might get more acceleration if I can coordinate that properly. But if I can't coordinate that strength, I cannot convert the strength into power, well then probably my sprint will not get faster. And if it does this have an effect on the technique I am running? Do I have to change my mechanics to be able to take advantage of that force application into the ground? All right. So if we talk now about the limiting factors which are related, we have two main phases, and I'll just put them here and then I'll go back. The first is the start and followed by the acceleration. All right, because this is how any sprint starts, is from basically zero velocity, and now you want to move that mass. You want to displace that mass horizontally, and to be able to displace it horizontally, you need to unload from anything you do in training related to sprints. Never ever compromise with the ground contact. Never. The moment the ground contact gets longer, meaning you are losing velocity, meaning you are not taking advantage of that force transmission into the ground to give you a greater velocity. Okay, yes, reaction time plays maybe a role, plays maybe a role, but way more important are the time patterns, the movement and time patterns. Okay, am I able, once I react and apply force against the starting blocks and move that mass forward, am I able to continue accelerating? Because this is from zero. Now with every step, with every ground contact, that mass is on its way moving. Am I able to continue that acceleration? To keep that speed curve? And I will show you in the next days what I mean by this and going more into details to it. Once this is done, what do I mean by saying, how do I start that whole thing? So the positioning of the starting blocks will become an important part. How do I set up these blocks so that I can push my mass with my limbs, which have a certain length, my legs have a certain length, my trunk has a certain length. I am crouched in the start with my hands at the line. So how do I create that force application into the blocks to get this mass moving forward? And to move forward in a continuous acceleration. So at the end, I can say I have done for the same distance, which is not changing, the 100 meters, 1 stride less or 2 strides less. And hence, yes, this is why I can run, instead of running at 10:50, I run at 10:30. Instead of running at 10:30, I run at 10:20 or 10. Or I'm running 10:10, 10:05, 10:0, what I don't know what, and now I want to go sub 10. What do I need to change? How does this happen? Does it happen to the amount of training I do or to the quality of training I do? The quality of my movements. All right? And then there's I've been already now here into going. And here you see it again coming up, the stride frequency, the stride length, and the width of the base of support. Are you out of that width? That means is force application moving that center of mass forward? Or is it going left and right and up and down in any direction, but not moving that mass? So that you must go back to pure strength. And pure strength meaning you are already compromising with the force application. All right, so I will go one step back now. I will just stop here that, and I will go back to my Mentimeter, and we will go to the second slide on my Mentimeter. Okay, here we collected now quite a bit of information where we'll be moving on. Having heard what I've said now in a more or less extended introduction, you rate the importance of these 4 statements. Okay, so you rank them. You will rank. How would you rank the following statements? What do you think about these 4 statements? Which of these 4 statements are more important or have a greater importance on what I do? You will see when you go there, you will be able to rank it, and then the bar will be moving there. And then we will see where you put your focus. So all of them are valid. It helps the understanding of the technical model. It helps running better or higher quality training sessions. It gives you guidance to maybe changing the mechanics, the technique, the technical, or adapt the technical model more to what the individualized model might be, still linked to the origin. Okay. So this is what I want to find out here is where do I start? Where do I start analyzing? Where do I start collecting data? Because I want to improve. I want to use that data. I want to make a better training. Okay? Let us see if anything will change while you are keying in, or you're ranking basically the statements. Only 3 for now. You see, once everybody gives, or those who are willing to contribute and to be part of that interactive, we will get, might change, all of a sudden the order might change. But now with 4 people keying in, you have put as first priority is to understand the technical model, the biomechanics of the technical model. Great, okay. Second priority is understanding how it can guide and improve the technique, the mechanics, so that then you can, for example, break 10 seconds and go to a sub 10-second run or a new PB. No more comments in the sense of rankings. 9 from the, how many? 20, 25, which you are present. I've only contributed to that result. That means you are basically now expressing the opinion of these participants of that session we're doing. See, this is, for example, another problem or issue or matter is if I've got 25 or 27 on the course on that biomechanics, and I see this result where 9 have contributed, and I say now the biomechanics class or participants have the opinion, and I don't say that, excuse me, that only 9 have contributed to that result, I'm already subjectively influencing my statement. Because I can say in Asia, in Southeast Asia, they are of the opinion that biomechanics, understanding the biomechanics of the technical model is the most important thing. Whether right or wrong depends on how many have contributed. If only 9 out of 25 and you 25 represent, I don't know how many 100 coaches, that could mislead the result. And that's with any measurement you do. If I measure, if I collect data and I have only from one run, how can you now say good, bad? How can you say this is how my athlete runs? This is my athlete is able to. Yes, Remy.
Ralph, hello. I thought that the 4 answers are all very relevant as what you mentioned, but I think so it's very dependent on what kind of situation or what kind of athletes we are having before we rank all these things. So maybe majority of the people are just thinking that right now to understand the technical models more than anything, or it's not going to the last one, which is the higher quality, which is the high performance. So it is dependent on who are we coaching and where are we now as a coaches also.
Correct, absolutely correct. But what is important as well is independently of this individual athletes you are all coaching, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you don't have an understanding, a biomechanical understanding of the model, can you coach? Are you able to set up a proper session? That means when you do sprints, what do you do? What methods, what means do you use? And are these methods and means matching or meeting the principle of how that development will happen? And this is why I gave you that example when I with the stride length and stride frequency, and I gave you the example of the current world record where we've got most of the data because it was measured, and since no more extensive measurement was done, so that we can say, oh, to run a 9-to-1 to run world record, you need to do a 270 stride. But now we come to what you said. If your sprinter is only 180, can he run a 270 stride? Will you work on improving that 270 stride, or will you work on other parameters to meet what the 270 stride does? You understand now? So yes, you are right. So they are all important, no doubt. But for all of you, and that's why I'm saying, it is dangerous to say now in Southeast Asia, coaches believe that, because I don't know who you're training, whom you're coaching. I don't know the profile of your athlete, right? So, but what I want is the principle to understand where do you start and how do you progress in that thinking process, in that managing, so to speak, your philosophy of coaching to make a difference at the very end. So that any effort you do, any effort the athlete does it lead to the intention, or are you already losing track? You are training, yes. You are training hard, yes. But are you training, to put again a provocative term, are you training smart? Are you really making a difference? Or are you just training and using methods and means which are all correct, but they might not apply to your athlete because he has a very specific profile which you're obviously not meeting because you are using things which might not match. All right? Any other comment? All right, so as I will leave it there, I will go out again and continue with my presentation. Okay, so as I said, setting the one performance limiting factor, and that applies, Remy, to what you said now, and very specific, is when you set up starting blocks. Let me go back a step. What guides you? What do you tell your athlete? You tell your coach, how shall I set up my blocks? Right? So what have you got in mind? You've got some references in mind, right? So you have to tell him something. He's asking you, tell your coach, my blocks, what should I do? I don't know how to set them up. And then you tell him 2 foot for the front and 3 foot for the rear. What makes you say that? Why? Maybe 1.5 is better, or 2.5 is better, or 4 for the rear one, or 1.5 for the rear one. And you have very small only difference, right? So you have to, somewhere you must, in your head, you must know why you're saying that. Or so that is why I was trying to explain the importance of understanding the basics of, so can you measure this? Yes, I can measure this. I can make it individual, because everybody has to set up his blocks, because you have to use blocks. If you want an official race and you want an official time, you cannot run without blocks. Then you've got one factor missing. They will tell you, oh, no, that doesn't count. That time doesn't count. You have not been using starting blocks. And even now, starting blocks with recall system, and so on and so forth, okay? So how do you measure this? There is now again here a formula. For male persons, you can measure the leg length. By measuring the leg length from the trochanter to the ankle, you've got his leg length, the lower leg length. You multiply that number, that figure which you got out of the measurement, with 2.5, and you will know more or less what is the stride length you want. You want block measurements here, there is another formula which says so, and putting all of this together, you will say, okay, to be able to run this stride length, this is how I need to set up the blocks first as a reference, and hence I will be able. So I can show you that formula afterwards to how to set up this block. So how do you know whether it's 1 foot, 1.5 foot, 2 foot, which is the basic theory, or whether 2.5 is better or 1.5 is better, all right? So you see already, so we are meeting, absolutely. So we are individualizing now basic information to a very individualized person, because we have measured his leg length, we know where, all right, so this is why that block setup might be the best possible for that athlete, okay? Then comes the set position. When you go into the set position, how do you get into that set position? Now we have set up that starting block, we have measured, we have individualized everything, we have considered what we know, and now he's in the blocks, and now comes the command set. What happens? How do I get into the setup position? How do I get into the set position? Who wants to throw in a comment?
Raise your hips.
Raise the hips. Okay. Other comment. You're all expert, guys. You're all coaches, obviously. Sprint coaches. Tell me. What shall I tell my athlete? He tells me, okay, coach. Okay. Now I am on your mark's position. How do I get into the set position? We heard now. Raise your hips. Other comments. Bear in mind, we are having biomechanics. Bear in mind, we're talking about force application.
Apply the force to the blocks.
I could not hear. What were you saying? Repeat, please.
Apply the force to the blocks.
How does this happen? How shall I apply? I don't know. You tell me apply for, I'll tell you, coach, but how do you do that?
Press the blocks.
Excuse me?
The foot or the feet should press the block. Press.
But how does this work? How shall my feet press the block? I'm still in the on your marks position, and I want to go into the set position. And so I have to somehow raise that body, all right? But I need to apply force at the same time. So you tell me press the feet, right?
All the breath,
the blocks.
all the
But
breath.
I still don't know. Where does this happen from? You see already by raising your question, by raising the question, and by making you a little bit insecure, it's all correct what you're saying. We are not in disagreement here. But you see already that if I, in my head, the imagery of applying biomechanics, the imagery of applying force is not clear, I cannot advise the athlete properly. If I tell him raise the hips, he tells you, and then he goes out of these blocks when the gun comes, or when you give him the start signal, and you see boom, boom, he stumbles out of the block. So opposite a wrong force application. He tells you, oh, coach, I did what you told me. I went up with the hips, and I tried to push, it's not happening. What will you tell him now? Try again. Try again based on what? On the same? Well, why do you expect a different result all of a sudden? So yes, you are absolutely correct. You want pressure, you want force into these blocks, because this is where you get the resistance from, right? This is why we've got them, the starting blocks. If not, we would not use. The 800-meter runners do not use starting blocks. Marathon runners do not use starting blocks. Why? Because they're useless. For them, they're useless. That won't change anything. Okay, it won't make them run faster. So they don't have them, but we have them, and we have to use them. So you see here already that by understanding how that force application happens and how that hip raises and to what level that hip has to raise is very strongly dependent about how you go into that push against the blocks is by activating your glutes. Because if you activate your glutes, you will have the thigh or the leg extend. The hip cannot extend because you are blocking with the arms in front, right? So what will happen? The blocks in the back, the arms in the front, now the hip will go up. It's the only point which can move. No other point can move, right? So by making use of my glutes, in extending my legs, I will move closer to the blocks. I will start apply force, and I will move into a position until that force application is at an optimum. We come back, Remy, to the stride length, to that individuality, right? The one is a bit higher, the one is a bit lower, the other one is a bit further away from the starting line, the other one is a bit closer to the starting line, right? And they're all doing starts. They're all doing starts, all right, and trying their best, okay? So by extending your legs through activating your glutes, you are activating at the same time force application into the blocks. So we are back to Rosalind, what you've said. You are getting pressure now. The foot is getting pushed against the blocks, but from the glutes, not from the calf muscle. So you're not extending your ankle. You are extending your leg. That means you are trying to extend that knee, and that knee can only get extended if the glutes work up there. All right. Now you've got the position, you will find the position. Now you can start saying, okay, go slightly lower or go slightly higher, or try to feel. And another indicator which would be is when you give resistance, that means you only put your hands at the shoulder. And if that movement creates all of a sudden pressure against your hands, then you know the force application is the right direction at the right height. These are some very small little cues. And then it works. And then you've already met biomechanical principles without measuring, without having somebody sitting there and trying to figure out by measurement or whatever. And now what you can have, yes, if you have the possibility to now collect data, then you might say, okay, look, if you do this, if you do that, oh, look, it has improved. Because now you know why you're asking for this data. Now you know why you're asking for that measurement to be done. Are you getting me? Are you on the same page? All right. And that will no doubt have an effect on your movement, on the time patterns of your movement, and at the same time on the reaction time. Because now all of a sudden you have loaded that muscle. You have tension on the muscles, on the right muscles. So when the gun goes and the hands are off, the body goes shooting in front, drives out of these blocks. And now I only have to move my legs in the correct way to continue that acceleration, that push. And now all of a sudden the model makes sense. Oh, push faster until you are upright, and then you don't push anymore. And then you go and step over your supporting leg. Are you getting me? So it is important to understand where the references are to make it happen. Now we are in the acceleration. We come into a pickup. Now what happens in that acceleration? That force application against the ground now, because the blocks are already gone, finished, they are behind us. So I'm only the ground now to apply force. Where is my body position? What do most of the athletes in basically, I don't want to use the wrong because there's nothing wrong. There's something which is a bit more convenient, others are less convenient. Okay, depending again on the various parameters which define the profile. So when I want to accelerate, when I want to pick up that acceleration coming from the start, a characteristic of the acceleration is that the stride gets longer. But it gets longer because the center of mass is traveling now faster and faster and covering more distance. So the horizontal displacement is there. But to be able to do that, I need as well to be able to push that center of mass forward. So I need to be in an ideal position there as well. The biggest mistake, and remember what I said in the blocks, where does the initiation come? From the hips, from the glutes. And that must continue throughout the acceleration. And now you get all of a sudden the center of mass and the hip extension closer to each other. You get that alignment. So never break on purpose, taking the shoulder down when you want to accelerate, because then force application will go into the wrong direction. Will not push that center of mass forward, will go past that center of mass. And instead of acceleration, all your effort will be less effective and efficient. All right, so you see how I'm explaining this to you, how I'm coming back to the biomechanics. And to understand, I will show you after some figures, and we have now 3 days that will work. So you are basically working against forces. You are working against when you are in a bend, which is another problem. On the straight, it might be easier. All of a sudden you find yourself, because you're running 200, you're on a bend. How does work there? Oh, I can't run straight. If I run straight, I lose my lane, the direction into my lane, and they will disqualify me, which happened yesterday at the German championships. The guy who won with a 20.31 or something like this, in the bend, was stepping on the line, got disqualified. So no time, no placing, lost the German championship because of a mistake. All right, so this appearing forces, the centrifugal and the centripetal forces, will make you adjust your way of acceleration, of applying this force. And how does this happen? I will show you the video now. It happens because a curve or a bend is a summation from physics, from a physics point of view. It's a summation of straight lines. And if you connect now the intersecting straight lines, you will get the bend, the curve. So this is what you need to do. How do I do this now in practice? Is that you are moving from a dual to a single path. Okay? That means you have your feet, when you're on the straight, you have your feet left and right. But when you are in the curve, you have to see that the left side, because we are running around the left curve, we don't run to the right, we run to the left. You need slight crossing. That means the left needs to come into a single track, not a dual track. By doing a single track, you will find the inward lean, and you will find that force application into the center of mass, into being able to push, into being able to accelerate. And you have to move away from the inside, from a foot and a half, to then the more you are forced with the bend, the more you remain on this straight line until you move out of the bend onto the straight, where then you move from the basically mid to the inside. Then doesn't matter because you're on the straight again. You will see this now on a video as well. So to keep you moving in a curved path, you need to get an inward rotation. That means you need to get that force which can resist to the centrifugal force, which is pulling you out. You need a centripetal force which takes you in again so that you can run inside. The problem is now not to run too strong inside. And that you have to move from the dual to a single track, leg position. All right? And at the very end, you will find that the better you can do this, the better you manage this, the higher the velocity is you can run through the bend. And the higher the velocity you get out of the bend. So by applying these various cues, you will be able to hold the line. You will be able not to step on the line, and you will be able to accelerate as well in the curve. So the first application, the curve will work as good as it does on the straight line. Okay, now look at it here. That is the straight line. So it starts with the setup of the blocks. How do I set up the blocks? I need the straight line from outside to here. The next one goes from here to here, right? The third one will go from there to there because I'm at bend. So I'm running into that point, and because I'm crossing now the left, I will be running from this point to the other point, and you will see it now from another. So the connection of the straight lines will give me that bent radius I need, and the inward lane I need to be able to run fast within a curve, applying force into the right direction, applying force into an efficient and effective way, so that then that body mass can accelerate. Okay, here we go. Let me just take this here. All right, so you see here, oops, sorry. You see this here? Straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, and now I'm around that bend. And that is even drawn here too narrow. Okay, so you see the focal point is the mid here. The mid here lets you go straight into this, and the other one goes straight from here, and that point again. So this is what I do is, and you will see it now in the video. You will see it here in the video. Look at the video. Look where the cones are set. You see that cone, that yellow cone? Can you see that? You see that red cone? All right, so what he will do, he will run here to run from here to here. So here he takes the cone from the inside, here he takes the cone from the inside, but this inside is outside. Right? So look what happens now. You got that? Okay, let us have it again. Wait, stop, sorry. You see here the dual, how it gets to a single track? You see how it's slightly crossing? See here, he crosses again. You see how he crosses here, and that makes him then come around that bend and be able then to clear that and to accelerate. So you see how far away he is from the inside. You see that? And so on and so forth. So you can continue putting cones here and here and here so that he gets his straight lines connected and he gets his acceleration, the force application properly applied. Okay? Any questions up to this point? Does it make sense? Are you getting the idea of how biomechanics can affect running or sprinting velocity and why? Okay, so now I've got my measurements. Here we go. London 2017 was the next biomechanical analysis done. You've got here the names of the finalists. Okay, you've got here the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which have produced everyone. Every color is linked to an athlete. So this brownish or yellowish color with the black is to Bowie. Talou as this one here. The skippers as this one. And so on and so forth. So you see here now that here they do not differentiate. Here it becomes different. You see how the curves is. Now I've got here every 10 meters, I've got a measuring point. And at the end, I've got a drawing about how that velocity curve up to 100 meters was produced. And now you can all of a sudden interpret and say, okay, who won and who got second and who got third. Okay, so you see here, despite of having here a weak point, despite she has only that between 70 and 80 is where the velocity drops. Our gold medalist. So the silver medalist here, which was Talu, was here in front, had a way higher velocity, but had here her weak point. So you see she was from 40 to 50, losing speed. But that is, what is this point here? Between 35 and 45 is which part of the race in the race model? Is the transition from acceleration into top speed.
It's a transition.
So obviously, excuse me?
Transition phase.
Transition from acceleration to top speed.
Yes.
And what happens technically from a mechanical point of view, from a technical model point of view? Here you push. Here you push faster. Here you push even faster. And now what happens here? You do not push anymore.
The vertical velocity.
Now you step over. So the change from pushing mechanics to step over mechanics is where you lose most of your time. And you see all of them had problems, except the winner. Okay? So we see here, the most difficult phase is the transition. Because from here, I'm now transiting. And if I don't want to lose here, I will have to see that that tendency is not carried on to the next sectors. All right? And then you can see, you can follow here, because these were the gold, the silver, and the bronze medalists. You can see where they had their position. Now I can work. How do I do this? This is because there's a, but if I understand, I can now observe. If I have a video, I know where to videotape and why I want to. So I have to videotape. If I want to have the transition, I have to videotape between 20 and 40 meters. Somewhere here, I have to videotape so that I can maybe extract that data. Or I can give an analysis of that technique being used at this point in time. All right. So here we go again. So we have the same here with the 110 hurdles. You see here the gold You see here the gold medalist. Why does this happen? What is this? This is a bit up and down. Because men's hurdles have 106. So it's a terribly, terribly high hurdle. And if he doesn't master, if he doesn't master the transition from sprinting, that means the sprint in between the hurdles, the spacing to cover that distance, and the hurdle clearance properly, that means that rhythmic unit, he will lose speed, he will drop. So he is losing his speed from the third to the fourth hurdle. Then he's picking up speed again between the fourth and the fifth. And then he's losing speed again. His big, why did he win compared to the others? Is because he was already at a higher speed. So despite of losing his speed, he was still faster. And then he could generate even more strength, more speed, which then all of a sudden he was already on his silver medal. On the sixth hurdle, he would not have been the winner. There was the silver medalist was faster than him. And even that person here with that little dot and that little line, okay, was even better. So the third one here was the fastest at the sixth hurdle. Then they were more or less again with the gold medalist slightly faster, and so on and so forth. And then you can see, now you can say in training, what do I need to do? Oh, I need to work on the transition between fourth or third and fifth hurdle, sixth hurdle, to produce here a smoother line, okay? A smoother curve, velocity curve, so that there is no more loss of speed in such a high, so that then I can continue running here on that level until sort of the length and the energy system makes me run slower. All right. So here you see already two analysis, and this is where the data you collect. This is now from 200 meters. Okay, you see here, left, right. This is Guliev. There's the 400 meters, no, the 200, sorry, Van Niekerk and Richards. Okay, here you've got the women. Skippers, Talou and Miller-Ubo. So you see here, the angles, how you do that. You see at the left, right, compared. So do they do left, right, same? Is the stride development left, right, same? Or is there any, on these parameters, is there any difference from left to right? So imbalance at touchdowns. Because the touchdown is dependent on how you move here. So again, we come back to our technical model. We come back to what is needed to be able to run a fast time on a 200 meters in this case, or on 100 meter. All right. So as I said, we won't go into too many details, but what you need to understand now from here is that inter-thigh angle, the height of the hip, the left-right touchdown, the way you are touching down, is the body collapsing with the resistance coming from the ground, or is the body able to be maintained on a high posture, on a hip extension posture, to keep that horizontal displacement going? Because we are basically fighting ground contact times or braking forces. So you see, we always come back, it comes back to force application. And the change in angles will tell you whether you are braking or whether you are still on a positive development of your run. Everybody at touchdown loses, has a braking phase. The fastest has the least braking phases. That means what was able to apply forces in the best possible way. Those who lose are those who are having greater braking forces. So yes, it comes back to the technique. Yes, it goes back to the technical model. Yes, it goes back to understanding when I have data, or what does this data tell me? It tells me on what do I need to focus. So even if I don't have this possibility to measure, I still know where to focus my attention. The coaching eye. We'll talk about this, but I will take it. We have, as I said, 3 days. I will take this to coaching eye, I think, and I'll take tomorrow or the day after, depending on how we're moving forward here. Okay. So what do I take out of this data? Is not to tell you need an angle of 156. You can't measure it. So what is the good telling you need another? What does it tell me? Nothing. If I don't know what it tells me, it sends me of a message. But if I tell you that angle, which is here, the alpha angle and the gamma angle here is 156, meaning 180 would be a total extension. But if you want to run fast, you will need to have, you see here that angle here, for example, is on the left and on the right the same. Here there is a big difference in the beta angle. All right, so I can then tell you, oh, this is why, focus on this, focus on that. Okay, compared to Van Niekerk, he had greater, so less collapsing forces. Van Niekerk was having greater braking forces because the angles are smaller. That means he's compressed while touching the ground. It might be because the 200 was after the 400, he was more tired, he was still not recovered. We don't know. So you see how dangerous it is, how we have to be careful in what we do. Okay, Richards had, for example, White relatively good, but obviously was not able to generate as much at ground contact as the others. All right. So you see here how data is interpreted and how data can then lead you to what you want. Okay. The knee angle. Okay. Now we can take the joint angle at takeoff. So that was the joint angle at touchdown. Here we go now at takeoff. What do we want to see? You see, we want to see here a hip extension. Again, we're at the gamma angle. So there's an overextension here. Okay, that gamma angle here is 190. Here it is on 202. Here is 211. So you see that gamma angle is obviously causing a backward lean. So the hip is overextending. Does this affect the ground contact? And if it does, is it wanted? And if it is wanted, what do I need to do? All right. So again, here, the same with the men and the women, we can go. You see here, for example, the women have always an overextension. So the hip moves further away to the front than with the men. Why does this happen? If ground contact braking forces are there, well, then the hip is pushed forward. There's a passive phase. So the hip goes overtaking the touchdown point. And it is compensated by basically trying not able to push properly at the right point in time. So you will have that pushing force and not that lifting force at top speed, and so on and so forth. So this is what you can go and you can start analyzing, all right? And to see what does it mean, the knee angle. You see that the knee is never fully extended. Why? Why is it so important at that touch, at that, takeoff phase? There is no fully knee extension. Can you remember what very often people tell you? Extend your knee. No, I don't want that knee to be extended. I want the hip to be extended, but not the knee. If I extend the knee, I'm working on a backside mechanics. If I work on the hip extension, I work on a front side mechanics. You see now where the relation comes, where the technical model comes in. So if I permanently use my backward cycle and want to push, I will never be able to run sub a certain time. All right, so these are all parameters, these are all indicators of whether we are on course, whether we are on track, or whether we are not on track. Okay, so you have here the 100, the 200, and the 400 meters. You have them here, step length, relative step length, step rate, and step width. Remember, I told you track width. Are you pushing into the right direction? Or are you going out of that funnel? All right, so you've got here again your 8 finalists, 100 and 200 women, and you've got here your 400 meter women. Okay, so you can see now, you can compare them. You can say, okay, look, who has the longest stride here was Bowie, 226. Who had the shortest stride or the smallest was, is Aure from Ivory Coast, 207, a 2 meter stride, more or less. Okay. In the 200 meter, you add the step length of 226 from skippers, despite of the bin, and you had the shortest 190 by Gaither. Okay, all the others in between. At 400 meters, you see here that you had the stride length of 193, and that girl, because I coached her myself, had a 50-20. And you see here 193. Why? It's because you can then say, okay, the rate, okay, is compared to here already relatively high. You have only 380 here and 362 here, 375 here. Compare the velocity, she loses less velocity. So, okay. So you see, she has 114, 112, 107. She's among those who lose the least velocity. So her technical model compared to her individual, Remy, remember when we had our conversation, when you had your comment? So we are trying to maintain your speed as much as we can. And now you can go and try to figure out why does these things happen. Why was she only 4th or 5th at the World Champs and couldn't make it to win a medal? Then you can start analyzing. Okay, here she's losing least. She's among the 3 best. But okay, so where does the time go? Where is that? Okay, and then you can start looking for reasons. Okay, so now let us just shortly go out again before continuing, and I go back to my Mentimeter. Come on. All right. So if I go now back to my point of, sorry, excuse me. If I go now and I say here, focal attention points in training, securing quality. If you have too many points outside that range, you are outside development. If you have plus minus same, so it can go either way. So you have to give it attention, or you must change something in order not to get red. And if you are on track, if your attention points are all okay, it will turn all green. Then you know, okay, I'm on course. Everything is okay. We can keep going. Okay? So we come back to the presentation. After having this, we go to the next set. Gatling 247, Coleman 235, Bolt 270, 269. Step frequency 4.6, 5, 4.27. Now, what do you do with data like this? What do these tell you? Honestly, first of all, nothing. It just tells you, Usain Bolt had a stride of 270 or 269 with a frequency of 427, 4.3. That's it. It doesn't say anything at the moment. Now, if I want to know how can this affect, well, then I can say, okay, how tall is Bolt? And this is why you always have to put in a relation. Gatling being one of the shortest and Coleman, so they can't run. They have to run a 40 centimeter more or less shorter stride with a higher frequency. But what does this mean in your training? What does it mean when you train and you use certain training methods? How can you get traveling time, that means horizontal displacement, with a greater velocity to approach what he is doing with a pure stride length? Okay? Same with the 200, same with the 400. Okay? So again, we can always go and try to see. See, so you've got them all. You've got all these data. They go back to what does it do? So you go back to remember what I showed you, these graphs of speed development. It goes back to in which section, which are the fastest, which are the slowest sections. And you see that the winner, she had here way more positive than negative. She had here 2. She had here none. So she was always lagging behind. She was only strong in the acceleration and then was lagging behind. And Baptist only had pure start acceleration. The first 5 strides that was it. And then she lost control. Okay? Any questions from your end up to this point? Does this make sense to you now? Do you now get slowly to understand how to apply biomechanics to your training, and what do figures tell you when you collect them? See, so that is important for you to understand. What do I do with such figures? Do I want to reproduce these figures with my athlete? Or do I want to achieve a similar effect with individualized means and methods which match more with the profile of my athlete? Yes, then you will get these times. If you want to run a sub 11, if you want to run a sub 10, here you've got the cutting point. Simbini ran a 10:01, Blake had a 999. So yes, this looks better, but it's basically the same. And if you compare now, where did Simbini lose against Blake? Despite that he was here faster, but he was obviously somewhere losing. Okay? Towards the end, 0.9, 0.88, 0.87, 0.89. So this is where the difference was made. Here, he still would have been fourth. If you compare him now to the third, second, and first, and so on and so on. So this is where, for example, because I mentor Simbini's coach, this is where Simbini did his development. Unfortunately, he still was not able to deliver that on the highest level, always finishing fourth, just short of the medal ranking. All right. And what he did is he improved that transition here from here to here so that he can maintain here. Because why? If he's faster on that part, the maintenance remains on a higher level. And hence, when the development, when the negative development of the curve comes, he will be on a higher level and will be then able to run faster. This because the 100-meter remains the same. All right. So we have been only looking on the fastest splits. Where are the fastest splits? How many of these are having the fastest splits, and when do these fastest splits affect what in your training? In your performance, sorry, and hence what you're taking out of your training. Acceleration phase. You see that, for example, here, you've got Usain Bolt. Where is he? Here. Okay. Is the only one who obviously is able to still reach a higher acceleration at, or one of the highest accelerations at 75 to 85 meters. 0.85, 0.86, 88, 88, 87, 87, 87, and so on and so forth. Okay, so he's the only one who between 40 and 60 is able to maintain or to improve. So he got here, he dropped to 0.85 and was able to maintain that. Okay. Velocity, maximum velocity between 50 and 60. Simbini had the highest velocity, but was not the winner. Talu had the highest velocity between 50 and 60, but was not the winner. Sorry, here we are. Because she was not able to maintain that. All right. In the last part of the race, which you need to understand is compared to your fastest splits, how are you able to maintain this maximum velocity, or how big is your loss? The smaller the loss, the better the maintenance of your highest velocity is. The bigger the loss is, the slower you are, or the more difficulties you've got maintaining. Now comes the question, what does it mean? Are we able to convert this into training? And if we do, what do we have to do? What do we have to look at? All right, so these are all information which help you understand how to individualize training, taking information from what is measurable, and now you can apply it even as a principle throughout. So what do these tell you is never go and train saying do a start up to 20 meters. So what do I tell the guy? If I don't tell him 20 meters, what shall he focus on? Who can tell me?
No, it has to be more than 30 meter.
Why? You see him.
Well,
They can accelerate up to 50. Why do you want to stop him at 30 meters?
exactly.
Why do you want to stop him here? What is the reason? Here you go back. If you go here back, sorry, where's my cursor? I lost my cursor. Okay, you were connected again. So here's the acceleration phase, which tells you 40 to 60. So why do you stop him at 30? You see what means understanding biomechanics, applying biomechanics? What you need to do is with your athlete is you need to let him focus on strides, on number of steps. The moment I can focus, I can get his focused attention to the number of steps. A very good session, he might run further than 30 meters. When he's on a not so good session, he might be less than 30 meters. So you are doing always the same. You are improving his acceleration ability. Correct? Getting me? So why 30 meters? There's no need. Don't link it to distance. Link it to number of strides. If we know, you know that with 15 strides, he gets to 25 or to 30 meters or whatever it is, then you tell him, I want you to have with the 15th contact to be beyond that point. Push better, push faster. When getting towards the end and you're getting upright, keep that hip extension. Don't try to push further, but keep that hip extension that's getting taller and taller. And this is how then you will be able to transit into step over mechanics. Oh, coach, how far shall I run? Well, run as long as you are able to maintain the mechanics. And if it goes well, you will find him running past the 40 or 50 meters when he goes for a maximum velocity. He will go probably 55 or 65 meters. If you have a bad day, you might run only to 45 or 50 meters. Are you getting me? Are you getting me how I'm extracting from that information I can measure, which was done, into what I do? So do not link or do not limit your development by distance. Limited by the quality of execution, by the quality of steps executed. If on a good day, he can run further, let him run further. If on a bad day, he can't run more than 30 meters, let him run less. And you're still doing your start acceleration. So, here is only confirming, giving you a little bit of a more visual of measurements. So we can, that is only to basically show you what we do or what is done, and then how can I take, as I said before, advantage of this, okay? Into my training, into what I do. So here you can see, okay, who is on the first 100 meter faster than on the second 100 meters? Who can be on the second 100 meters, or who is faster than on the first? How is the difference between the second and the third 100 meters? Okay. Oh, I'm here at the first 100 meter, I'm at 87% or 87.5%. Okay. Have a second where run faster than the first 100 meters. So not all of them do that, but the majority do it. So when I go now for 400 meter training or for 200 meter training, what do I do? I can go for fly-ins, I can go for split runs, I can go for in one shot runs, but where do I put the focus? That is important if you want them to train efficiently. If the athletes reach where they reach the top speed, in 200, for example, it's at 150. So why do you do 180 or 200 meters in training? Are you maybe not counterproductive? And if you aren't, what is then the purpose? Okay, so the focus on the stride frequency rather on stride length, that means on moving that center of mass forward, okay? And never say long, extend. You say no, maintain, keep your feet going, keep your legs going, keep that step over mechanics going, so that the center of mass is losing less and you have smaller, greater force, smaller braking forces and greater propelling forces. And that is why you can maintain, for example, your speed. Okay, here we've got splits on the 400, similar. Okay, so this, for example, here for the women and for the men, that from this measurements, from this in biomechanics, you can extract how training can be planned. Because we know that in biomechanics it's about force transmission. We know that we can get tired when we run 400 meters. We know that getting tired is a limiting factor in what we do and how we do it. So now we can go and say, okay, what am I focusing on? All right, so I'm just showing you these few data so that you can just get a bit of a sense to it. So the loss of velocity is the biggest problem when you run 400. It's because force application with the distance becomes a problem. It transits or transfers to coordination problem. From there, it transfers to problems in execution or in repeating the technical model on a higher level. Okay, so the relative step length plays a major role. Step length, when you see an athlete, never tell them longer. No, you tell them keep going, step over, keep that body, that mass moving, so that force transmission of forces is given. Okay, you will tell them be efficient, focus on your mechanics, focus on your knee, stepping over the support leg, okay? So that then you can have your speed endurance or your maintenance phase maintained to maintenance of the mechanics and not necessarily to over distance. Are you getting me? Are we on the same page? Okay, now I'll do a short break and I will ask you to tell me what is it you need to know, and then we'll just continue. Is there anything I can explain to you? Let me stop sharing first. Okay, so what did you understand? What did you get and what didn't you get? Or where do you need a bit more of an explanation? Up to you guys. The Q&A before I continue bombarding you with information. If I would ask you, we'll go back to our Mentimeter and I will ask you to key in here.
Ralph,
Yes.
Dr. Ralph, I just want to ask for the development athlete, especially the young athlete. We are looking at a
Yes.
very high performance athlete, world-class athlete, the graph.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we supposed to say the same? All that information, like
Yes, that
maintain
guides you,
the
certainly.
velocity and so
Yeah.
on? Because I also realize because the touch ground, the foot ground
Yes.
contact they are not really strong because still they are very young athlete. Do you think the foot itself is a very important element? Do we need to look at the foot as well? How
At the
the
foot?
foot is actually move? Yeah.
At the foot or at the food?
No, the foot. Yeah.
The foot. Okay. Certainly, as I was saying before, we can never ever compromise with ground contact.
Yeah.
Anything we do in training is about force application. That means about the touchdown, about the duration of the touchdown of the contact, and about the proper direction or force application. Because if the faster I want to run, the higher I have to be, so that I support my body weight and do not carry my body weight. Secondly is, when I want to increase that strength factor, again, I have to only increase it that mechanics are positively supported or assisted and not negatively. That means with more strength, increasing braking forces at touchdown. And if you would watch kids run, very, very few, it's a very small percentage, which are not able to have short ground contacts. When does this happen mostly? Is in the puberty. When they come from this more child or childish phase into the more adult phase. Why? Because the length of the muscles change, the length of the bones change. So all of a sudden, it doesn't match. You grow faster, the bones grow, the muscles get tighter, you lose coordination. Then the muscles adapt, the bone remains, you lose coordination. All of a sudden, the levers are working differently. So again, it's about force application. Are you getting me where I'm taking it from? That means, yes, when you have kids, always tell them to be aware of running. And the best example is for those countries of you who have a beach side or a waterfront side. If you would have hot sand and you would run over the hot sand, what do?
It's terribly hot here.
You would rather try to spend as less or at least time possible on the sand, correct?
Of
Because it's
course.
hot, it's burning, correct? That is what you need to do. So that's what you have to tell kids. Imagine you're running on hot sand. You're barefooted and you're running over the sand at the beach side. So I'm trying to maintain short ground contact because the longer I'm on the ground, the hotter it becomes, correct?
Yeah.
So that is the cue you give to the kids. So never compromise. It's not a strength factor at the beginning. It's a neuromuscular, and you will hear probably tomorrow. I don't know whether we'll get to that point today, but latest tomorrow, I will give you this neuroscience, this neuro link, this neuromechanical link to the execution of movement. So when you want, and that's why I had it at the beginning, when you want or you believe that strength is a factor and you cannot measure it because you don't have the devices or the sports science which you've got in the country is not supportive, the focal point of your attention must be how is the ground contact produced. If the ground contact remains short, increase. If the ground contact compromises, change. Because you can never compromise with the ground contact. And if you want to make him stronger, but not at the expense of the ground contact. If you want the stride to get longer, not at the expense of the ground contact. If you want the stride to become faster, not at the expense of the ground contact, because at the ground contact is where force transmission happens. So in your running mechanics for a child, it is always the knee that leads the leg movement, and it's always the elbow that leads the arm movement. And in between, you want that properly aligned posture in a vertical so that you can guarantee horizontal displacement. And that is linked to the speed of the leg down and the amount of force you are putting into the ground and you're taking off the ground as a result. Did it answer your question? Or do you need any more clarification, different clarification? Sorry.
Yes, doctor. Yes. Yeah.
You got it?
Thank you. Dankeschön.
You're happy?
No,
Okay.
not happy yet, but I will listen.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Sir, one thing is there. If you told about the athlete is placing
sorry, it is breaking.
in front
I
of
didn't get you. Sorry, I didn't get you. It was breaking.
you told about the ground contact, isn't it?
You are.
Hello?
Yes, I'm not hearing you. Hello? Do you guys hear me? Is it on my side or is it on your side?
Oh, good. I can hear you, sir.
Okay, so it must be on your side. Right, it's on your side. I'm not hearing you. I cannot hear. It is breaking.
Okay, fine, sir, no issues.
Raj, you can write it down on the chat.
Yeah, right. Or write it into the message box. Write your question into the message
I'll
box.
do that. I'll do that.
Okay. Any other questions or any other clarification questions?
Hi, Dr. Raf. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Raf. Yeah, I just have a question regarding the part where you spoke on the acceleration.
Yes.
So regarding the point where you said work on the number of steps and not the overall distance. Right. So this question is directed for developing athletes between the ages of 13 to 16. Okay,
Always
so
the same. Your
it's always-
intention must be to reduce the number of strides, but not at the expense of the ground contact. So I'm repeating myself now differently. It means
so
to me it is important that you strike the ground always in the same way, so that ground contact is that you are basically propelling the center of mass forward and up. So you need a vertical lift and the horizontal displacement.
okay.
If that clarifies or answers your question.
Yes,
Okay.
much clearer
So
now. Thanks.
what could be methods and training means to do that? Specifically with kids, do you have any in mind which come to your mind straight away? How could you do that? Now, if we are in training. Do you have wickets?
Yes.
Wicket
Do you
run.
have brick
Grounding.
similar device material equipment? So if you take small obstacles, okay, of maybe 5-10 centimeters maximum, max, rather 5, and you would place them properly, that the spacing from wicket or from small obstacle to small obstacle is matching stride lengths of that individual you are coaching. This is how you will regulate, because the obstacle will lift the center of mass and the spacing will force you to be active and will force you to be active in the right way, so that you don't lose with the braking forces, you don't lose speed. And this is why you will cover these wickets in a proper technique at a certain speed.
I
That
see.
is the easiest way to correct mechanics.
I do that actually,
Okay.
but it's over distance.
What do you mean over
So-called,
distance? Too long?
meaning I estimate roughly where 20 meters is, 30 meters is, and I have the last wicket at 30 meters.
Yeah, but
for
you don't
example.
need this. This is why you don't need this. What I'm saying, what I'm trying to explain. You, instead of taking the distance now, you take, okay, I will say now 12 wickets or 12 strides. So you will place them properly. So that first he focuses on the mechanics, on the proper execution, on the technical execution in a proper way, in a proper mechanics of these obstacles. Then you will say, okay, look, I will increase by half a foot or by quarter of a foot. By increasing same number of strides, same frequency, by a quarter of a foot, you will be again further down, right? And then will come the point, well, yes, you might be at 20 meters or 25 meters with the same number of strides. Does this now explain?
Yes, very clear.
So that is approaching it from a technical point of view, from a mechanics point of view, from model or technique or technical model point of view, and meeting biomechanical principles practically applied.
Yes, thank you.
Okay? Any other question? That's it. The question is now for yourself to understand, and so that you get the answer for what you want to know, and not what, again, in general. There is no one size fits all. So there is no, this is what is done. You saw now here by the question I was given, I could give him now a very specific answer to his question, and even a practical solution to applying biomechanically properly, meeting principles or demands of proper technique. Yes, it can. Yes, I'm just seeing Veramani is asking and saying using shaping methods, or is giving as a statement, using shaping method for acceleration technique development, but not only for acceleration. If you now take that acceleration, not to link to the phase of acceleration, but to sprints in general, to develop speed, you can use that shaping method. To use then some terms which you know from your probably CCS or from your courses. So whenever you want to develop technique, always have a focal point or a focus on what you want to be able to adjust properly the mean you are using, so that then you get the output or the outcome and the output met. All right. Okay, then let me go on to the last slides of this presentation. So here again, we have the split times, as I said, we had them already. So the loss of velocity, the relative step length plays a major role, as we said, because why? Because velocity and step length are in a relation to each other. Okay, if I overstride, I brake. If I brake, I lose speed. If I do not hit the ground, the touchdown is not done properly, either under or slightly below or behind, okay, the center of mass, well, then I'm not propelling that center of mass forward. Then I won't be able to either lengthen that stride properly. That means covering the horizontal displacement. And finally, the stride efficiency is how effective I am in my mechanics and how this technical demand of a proper mechanics of technique can be mastered by first mastering the execution properly and then going into the maintenance or the endurance part of the technique. All right. So if we go back here, that is the reason we'll skip that one at the moment, because that's a different matter which we do not need necessarily. But here with the hurdles, it is very interesting. You can see here that hurdle clearance is a major point, but linking that clearance with the sprints. And you see that at hurdle 5 or 6 is when you've got the men and the women, where they have their so-called acceleration phase ending and where they get into the maintenance phase. All right. So
excuse me, Raf. You
yes.
cannot see your screen.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Yes, correct. I have changed. I went out of it. Yeah, sorry. Okay, here we're back. Now you've got it, right?
Yes, we got it.
Okay. So again, women have more or less the shift between the start acceleration to the maximum velocity at about the 5th hurdle. Men have it at about 6th hurdle. You see that the difference, or how do you manage this now in training? As we have been talking with these wickets, now you've got the wickets, they are there because they are the hurdles. They are fixed, these obstacles. You've got the distance fixed, you've got the height fixed. You can play with the height, you can play with the distance, but the competition, you can't play with the height and with the distance. So what do you do in order to guarantee proper mechanics, to have your acceleration up to the 5th hurdle, okay, and with the men to the 6th hurdle, in order to then go into that maintenance phase, which we were speaking about. Important here is to understand is that you need to focus on maintaining speed in between hurdles to be able to maintain hurdle clearance on the level you want. And don't do the mistake to basically trying only to secure stride length and then flying over the hurdle. So how do you train that? Very simple again. you shorten the distance in between the hurdle, you guarantee the rhythmic unit first, and then you start moving the hurdles further away or raising them. So either I lower and I shorten, lower the height of the hurdle and shorten the distance in between hurdles to be able to run that fluid sprint and clearance of the hurdle, which we call rhythmic unit, in such a way that I guarantee. To give you an example, if I want to run 13 seconds, right? 13 seconds, meaning I have to run from start to acceleration around 2 seconds. And I've got my finish from the 10th hurdle to the finish around 2 seconds. So I'm back to 9 seconds, right, for the 10 hurdles. So I'm basically running 9 spacings, correct? The 9 spacings to run in 13 seconds with the 2 + 2, meaning you have to have 1 second in between the hurdles, correct? So this is what I guarantee. So I lower the hurdle or I shorten the distance in such a way that I first guarantee the 1 second. 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. And when that is mastered, I now move the hurdle either up or forward or both to again maintain 1 second, but covering now again the hurdles, the rhythmic unit in the similar way, without losing time, without compromising with the time. To do that, I have to as well focus not compromising with my sprint mechanics and my hurdle clearance, which is then the rhythmic unit. Are you getting it? That's exactly the one-to-one transition to the sprints. With the women, it's around 5th, 6th hurdle. As I said, that from the 5th to the 6th hurdle, you are transiting into, and that is where you might get, you are getting fast here, and now you have to maintain that fast movement, because now it's getting into that maintenance phase and then into that tiring or the negative development, so that you do not hit the hurdle, or you basically can attack the hurdle always at the same point. Okay, so always focus on the quick step over rather than on the extension. So to maintain the traveling time, the horizontal displacement of your center of mass. Okay, is it making sense? Same here. When you look at all the 10, now you've got them, you see, 1.04, 1.01, 0.99, 0.98, 0.96, 0.97, 0.99, 1.00, 1.00, 1.02. If you average this, plus 2.4 from the start to the first hurdle, plus 1.2, that means again, we are, as we said before, right? We're setting up a model. And that's why then you have the time. You've got now here the different, you get now here to the silver medalists. You see, silver medalists were here 0.95, but in average, she was slower than this. And this is why she won the gold and she only got the silver. And if you compare again to the bronze medalist, you will see again. Okay, so important is to understand is that I need to maintain an average, clearing the hurdle and spacing in between the hurdle, and that I need to either lower and shorten, or shorten and maintaining the height, or lowering and maintaining the distance. Doesn't matter what the problem is. If I maintain the length and I lower the hurdle, it's for hurdle clearance, speed of hurdle clearance. If I shorten the distance and I maintain the height of the hurdle, it's for in-between sprinting, my sprinting mechanics. All right. And if I do both, it's for that rhythmic unit. Are you getting it?
Indeed.
Does it now sort of give you more sense to it? So men hit hurdles more frequently. Why? Less of an impact on race performance than in women's event. Okay. The center of mass must kept high, sorry, so that upon landing, I do not collapse. Because if I collapse with the landing, I am basically running up and down and up and down and up and down. That can't be fast. I have to be running in horizontal displacement, and the center of mass has to move. There's a very good movie. Ria, you might still in Jakarta have this movie, 13 Seconds, which was on a video on the very first CCS. And on that video, you will see done by the French. They have put on a dark background and marked the center of mass with a light. And you will see that that hurdler, despite that this is a main hurdle, basically draws a straight line while sprinting or while clearing hurdle. It does not do up and down. It's a straight line. So that shows that he masters the in-between sprinting, keeping the center of mass high, so that then he can clear that high hurdle again with a high speed, maintaining that center of mass high. Okay? So that is the first part. Now I will again open first the floor, and I will give you here the chance to put in here, what did you retain from what was said now, close to 2 hours, I think. I don't know, I don't have a watch with me. So I think, but we are turning here it's close to 11, so it's close to, I think, 16 hours at your time in Jakarta. So having listened to this first part of the biomechanics of force application, or it is all about force application, to give it a bit of a fancy title, what did you retain? Key in what you retained. What is important? If you understood the application of the biomechanics for the sprints and hurdles, what is it, what you kept in mind, what you would be able to give me as a term, or as a sort of a reference, so that I know, they got me, they understood my message. Same, it is the same code. You key in that Mentimeter, menti.com. You open, you key in that code, and now you can put in your terms or your little small comments. So how does this now convert into training? How will you make this happen? If you want a fast touchdown, if you want glute activation, do you know exercises? These will follow. I will show you a few now in the next 2 days. But if I would ask you now, you write glute activation, do you know what that means? Do you know how glutes are activated, addressed, so that then the mechanics which are being used are correct? To give you a feedback, oh yeah, that's what he's doing. He's doing proper mechanics. His hip is high. If his hip is high, then the ground contact should be short. Oh, happening as well. So I know he's activating his glutes. If ground contact increases, if there's a loss of velocity of a forward propelling or horizontal displacement, then I will see a collapsing, or I will see a negative movement, which means then a loss of velocity. So I don't need to measure everything, but I need to know what is the reference, what tells me whether the athlete is executing what I want properly, or whether he's doing mistakes. So joint angle is the collapse either of the knee or in the knee and the hip. Force application, meaning getting tall. Okay, this has not been written here. Getting tall. And when I get tall, I have a proper touchdown and a short touchdown time. And I have glute activation. So I've got that part covered here, meaning I've got proper force application. Then I'm upright and I'm in a vertical position, which we can interpret as tall. Okay, so I've given you sort of a bit of a hint. When I say upright vertical position, I mean always a tall, a high position. So that neither a hurdle, if it comes to hurdles, nor by when I run on a dash, I do not see up and down movements. I see only a forward propelling center of mass. They are supported by the arms swing. When the arm swings backwards, which is on the same side of the knee lift, then it helps me raise that center of mass. Okay, if I have the arms again swinging backwards, downwards, backwards, up, and I'm in a start or in a vertical, or in an acceleration posture, then I'm working through that hip extension to increase the push and the force transmission into the ground so that I can move and accelerate that body permanently by pushing faster until I have to step over and to then shift from an acceleration into a high velocity phase or into an afterwards a maintenance of the velocity until deceleration basically takes over. And there that should be as short as possible. That means I should be as close as possible, if not already at the finish line. So technical model in hurdling, it's the rhythmic unit, is the link between the sprinting mechanics and the clearance of the hurdles with basically no loss of time. So ground contact applies to attacking the hurdle. Ground contacts and touchdown, as you mentioned here as well, without braking forces apply to the touchdown as well behind the hurdle, so they can continue sprinting. All right, that happens through glute activation for hip extension, for lift of the center of mass, and through the active touchdown, active movement to the ground, through the ground, to then transfer the upright movement and to the swinging leg, and supported by the arms, the horizontal displacement of the center of mass. All right. Okay, I've seen just now here, triple extension. Now you might be surprised. Triple extension does not happen anymore. That's an old approach to sprinting. We do not look for triple extension. We only look for hip extension and lift. So the moment the hip extends, it increases the force transmission on the ground, but lifts at the same time because of the short, active, dynamic touchdown and ground contact phase. It lifts you straight away. So you have no time to go and extend your knee. The knee extension happens because the hip drives up and extends and moves away from the knee and gets the knee to extend, but without overemphasizing that extension. So in your vocabulary, try not to follow or not to focus on that triple extension, and in the vocabulary, try to not use it anymore. That's an old-fashioned way of sprinting, and that might be one of the factors why you do not break 10 seconds or 11 seconds with the women. Because if you have proper force application, you will never get into a triple extension. It doesn't work. You will get into high horizontal propelling force velocities by very short, very high force transmission forces into the ground, and which will keep the ground contact short. Okay, so hip triple extension, the one who wrote it can take it out again. We'll replace it with hip extension, not triple extension. Okay, all right, so if there are no more questions, I'll start with the second presentation, which will just, okay, here we go.
Prof, sorry, I think there is a question on the chat box.
Sorry?
I think there is a question on the chat box.
In the box, yes, I will just have a look now. Well, chats here. Okay, so during the maximum velocity, the placement of foot in slide in front of the center of gravity or just underneath the body center of mass. Okay, I guess you will allow me this just to, because if not, I cannot clarify. So it's not a criticism, but it's a clarification of terms. Center of mass and center of gravity should be the same, but are not the same. The center of mass is depending on your posture and how you are as a human being will define where your center of mass is. And sometimes moving, this is why I was always talking about moving the center of mass and not the center of gravity. Yes, the gravity applies on the center of mass, that is no doubt, that is correct. But it's not a center of gravity that you are moving. You are conquering gravity by controlling the movements or the velocities of the center of mass. All right, so now to come back to the question, during maximum velocity, the intention, because the swinging leg is controlled, mastered through the knee, and to control the up and then forward and then down and quick, fast movement to the ground with an extension of the hip and an extension of the leg automatically to a second to the quickness of the loose knee and the quickness of the knee drive of the thigh down to the ground. You will basically, from your intention, I always tell the athlete, you want to hit the ground in front of the center of mass. But fact is that because of being active dynamic in your movement, you will hit the ground underneath the center of mass. Is that clear? Does it make sense? If not, ask again. Okay? So I go to the next. Triple extensions in the starting blocks. Here as well. We will go, I will show you tomorrow when we talk about, because I had first to go through that more theoretical and specific theory to make you first understand before presenting you the model. But you're asking here a question regarding the model. That means the vision, the image you create. Yes, out of the starting blocks, basically, you will see an extension, and I will show you the videos. But you are not working toward that extension, you are working against moving the hip and the hip extension away from the reference point, which is the foot at the back, be it at the blocks or be it on the first 1-2 contacts. but you don't work into that extension. So you push. By pushing, yes, you are working with that extension, but again, that extension happens because the hip is moving forward and the knee is extending, but not because you are using your quads. It's because you're using your glutes and your hamstrings to move that hip forward, and hence the quadriceps in front will secure the stiff leg to transfer forces into the ground, and hence by doing this the body will be propelled forward. And when the body is propelled forward, yes, the foot will have that very short, quick but indirect extension. So you don't work into that hip extension, you just benefit from it. Does this make sense? Or the one who raised the question? Okay, then it answers as well the triple extension, or the triple, well, the question with the triple extension as well, following that. So by lifting here, by lifting your hip center of mass shifted to underneath the body, thus maintaining the vertical displacement. What happened to forward motion? Again, forward motion is because you are applying force into the ground, through the ground, and you are swinging at the same time. You are closing the interthigh angle and taking over the support leg, which will maintain the horizontal displacement. And that active lift upward forward, or that active phase where you basically control with your knee, you start closing the angle. So you're not working on the back support, you're working on the front support. So closing the angle, the foot is released from the ground in the back. The knee, the thighs, close the angle as quick as possible, overtake the support leg, and continue swinging forward upward to the lift with the hip flexor, increasing the forces and shortening the ground contact time. You will secure horizontal displacement and hence forward motion. Does this clarify what has been asked? Yes, that's correct. It is by maintaining, that means you try to keep the hip as high as possible. You will be able to move in the right angles, as you say. So again, in acceleration, it's that forward lean, but out of the hip extension. While you go and you shift, you will have an overall lean continue, but you will do this movement, this movement. That means this will maintain here the vertical alignment, and the swinging leg will carry you and continue moving you forward into the horizontal displacement, into covering distance. It's an active movement. It is all active parts. There are no passive parts. The moment you become passive in one of the parts, this is when you, as I said, by collecting data or by analyzing video, you will see, oh, the interthigh angle is not closing quick enough, or the step over is not active enough, or the leg in the step over is too long, or I'm blocking the knee in the ground preparation and hence touchdown phase. So that means I'm pulling the foot backwards instead of extending the leg to the glutes downwards to the ground. All right? Okay. So if that has been understood, I'll move let me just quickly, sorry, I have to open the other presentation. Okay, here we go. So let me just again share the screen. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
All right. So what I've been trying to explain to you and telling you was part of that what we call neurobiomechanics. It's all linked to the brain activity, to the link between inter and then intramuscular coordination, which will then define the time and movement patterns. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that whatever we do in high performance is what we do repeatedly and train repeatedly. So whatever happens, I have to say, in high performance is what we do repeatedly and train repeatedly. Because in stress situations, the brain will always tap on what it masters and not what it doesn't master. If what I master are wrong mechanics, well then that's what I'll get. So this is why I'm so vehement and I'm defending always the technical approach and the movement from a technical point of view as good as possible. Don't put conditioning first and then try to fix the technique or the mechanics. It will not work because you will have repeatedly done something on a level and in a way which you will not want to recall when you go and want to deliver. And as you see, that is not from me, that is from Aristotle. He was way more intelligent and had way more brains than I do have. All right, so what I want to recall, I have to train. This is why it is so important to understand the biomechanics and to understand how force transmission happens, and hence understand how the technical model works and why. And following that, I go and now start putting my bits and pieces, my puzzle pieces together in planning, in saying, okay, which parts do I need to train first to master them, to develop them, and afterwards to recall them when needed. All right. So having said this, I will show you a small video where I'm showing this because it summarizes, it's a bit beyond, but it doesn't go very long. It's beyond this pure sprints, but it explains to a very big extent this applied biomechanics and in a very different way. But I guess some of you will know that video or that YouTube.
Win at work by communicating effectively. With Grammarly, meet Todd. He is emailing a...
Can you see that? You see that?
Yes, yes, we do.
Okay.
The Olympic motto is Sidious Altius Fortis, faster, higher, stronger. And athletes have fulfilled that motto rapidly. The winner of the 2012 Olympic Marathon ran 2 hours and 8 minutes. Had he been racing against the winner of the 1904 Olympic Marathon, he would have won by nearly an hour and a half. Now, we all have this feeling that we're somehow just getting better as a human race, inexorably progressing. But it's not like we've evolved into a new species in a century. So what's going on here? I want to take a look at what's really behind this march of athletic progress. In 1936, Jesse Owens held the world record in the 100 meters. Had Jesse Owens been racing last year in the World Championships of the 100 meters, when Jamaican sprinter Usain Bolt finished, Owens would have still had 14 feet to go. That's a lot in sprinterland. To give you a sense of how much it is, I want to share with you a demonstration conceived by sports scientist Ross Tucker. Now, picture the stadium last year at the World Championships of the 100 meters. Thousands of fans waiting with bated breath to see Usain Bolt, the fastest man in history. Flashbulbs popping as the 9 fastest men in the world coil themselves into their blocks. And I want you to pretend that Jesse Owens is in that race. Now close your eyes for a second and picture the race. Bang, the gun goes off. An American sprinter jumps out to the front. Usain Bolt starts to catch him. Usain Bolt passes him, and as the runners come to the finish, you'll hear a beep as each man crosses the line. That's the entire finish of the race. You can open your eyes now. That first beep was Usain Bolt. That last beep was Jesse Owens. Listen to it again. When you think of it like that, it's not that big a difference, is it? And then consider that Usain Bolt started by propelling himself out of blocks down a specially fabricated carpet designed to allow him to travel as fast as humanly possible. Jesse Owens, on the other hand, ran on cinders, the ash from burnt wood, and that soft surface stole far more energy from his legs as he ran. Rather than blocks, Jesse Owens had a gardening trowel that he had to use to dig holes in the cinders to start from. Biomechanical analysis of the speed of Owens' joints shows that if he'd been running on the same surface as Bolt, he wouldn't have been 14 feet behind. He would have been within one stride. Rather than the last beat, Owens would have been the second beat. Listen to it again. That's the difference track surface technology has made, and it's done it throughout the running world. Consider a longer event. In 1954, Sir Roger Bannister became the first man to run under 4 minutes in the mile. Nowadays, college kids do that every year. On rare occasions, a high school kid does it. As of the end of last year, 1,314 men had run under 4 minutes in the mile. But like Jesse Owens, Sir Roger Bannister ran on soft cinders that stole far more energy from his legs than the synthetic tracks of today. So I consulted biomechanics experts to find out how much slower it is to run on cinders than synthetic tracks, and their consensus was that it's 1.5% slower. So if you apply a 1.5% slowdown conversion to every man who ran his sub 4 mile on a synthetic track, this is what happens. Only 530 are left. If you look at it from that perspective, fewer than 10 new men per decade have joined the sub 4 mile club since Sir Roger Bannister. Now, 530 is a lot more than one, right? And that's partly because there are many more people training today and they're training more intelligently. Even college kids are professional in their training compared to Sir Roger Bannister, who trained for 45 minutes at a time while he ditched gynecology lectures in med school. And that guy who won the 1904 Olympic marathon in 3.5 hours, that guy was drinking rat poison and brandy while he ran along the course. That was his idea of a performance-enhancing drug. Clearly, athletes have gotten more savvy about performance-enhancing drugs as well. And that's made a difference in some sports at some times, but technology has made a difference in all sports, from faster skis to lighter shoes. Take a look at the record for the 100-meter freestyle swim. The record is always trending downward, but it's punctuated by these steep cliffs. This first cliff in 1956 is the introduction of the flip turn. Rather than stopping and turning around, athletes could somersault under the water and get going right away in the opposite direction. This second cliff, the introduction of gutters on the side of the pool that allows water to splash off rather than becoming turbulence that impedes the swimmers as they race. This final cliff, the introduction of full body and low friction swimsuits. Throughout sports, technology has changed the face of performance. In 1972, Eddie Merckx set the record for the longest distance cycle in 1 hour at 30 miles, 3,774 feet. Now that record improved and improved as bicycles improved and became more aerodynamic, all the way until 1996, when it was set at 35 miles, 1,531 feet, nearly 5 miles farther than Eddie Merckx cycled in 1972. But then in 2000, the International Cycling Union decreed that anyone who wanted to hold that record had to do so with essentially the same equipment that Eddie Merckx used in 1972. Where does the record stand today? 30 miles, 4,657 feet. A grand total of 883 feet farther than Eddie Merckx cycled more than 4 decades ago. Essentially, the entire improvement in this record was due to technology. Still, technology isn't the only thing pushing athletes forward. While indeed we haven't evolved into a new species in a century, the gene pool within competitive sports most certainly has changed. In the early half of the 20th century, physical education instructors and coaches had the idea that the average body type was the best for all athletic endeavors. Medium height, medium weight, no matter the sport. And this showed in athletes' bodies. In the 1920s, the average elite high jumper and average elite shot putter were the same exact size. But as that idea started to fade away, as sports scientists and coaches realized that rather than the average body type, you want highly specialized bodies that fit into certain athletic niches. A form of artificial selection took place, a self-sorting for bodies that fit certain sports. And athletes' bodies became more different from one another. Today, rather than the same size as the average elite high jumper, The average elite shot putter is 2.5 inches taller and 130 pounds heavier. And this happened throughout the sports world. In fact, if you plot on a height versus mass graph one data point for each of 24 sports in the first half of the 20th century, it looks like this. There's some dispersal, but it's kind of grouped around that average body type. When that idea started to go away, and at the same time, digital technology, first radio, then television and the internet, gave millions, or in some cases, billions of people a ticket to consume elite sports performance. The financial incentives and fame and glory afforded elite athletes skyrocketed, and it tipped toward the tiny upper echelon of performance. It accelerated the artificial selection for specialized bodies. And if you plot a data point for these same 24 sports today, it looks like this. The athletes' bodies have gotten much more different from one another. And
Okay, so I just wanted to show you here and to give you that, because we've been talking about it, how technology and how knowledge has basically impacted what we are doing and understanding. So it doesn't only come from the technology itself, but it comes from understanding the technology and from using data, from using information which comes from that technology into what we are doing. And as you have heard from the various examples, if you would then want to see how does this work on my athlete, you would have first to create similar conditions. You had this with the cycling, when the Cycling Federation decided to use the same bicycle for the same test, they got a way smaller difference than doing it differently. So again, if we come to what we're saying, if we understand how to get or how to use information, we can close the gap quicker. And out of that, we can get a similar result to what we want. All right. So where does this depend from? It comes from understanding the basic technical model. It comes from conditioning that model, and conditioning that model in two types. The one is the technical model, and the other side is the conditioning model of the advanced part. So the basics are there, and these are then developed into advanced models. Coming back to the questions which have been raised by you. If I have a child and it was asked, does this child or can this child? Yes, that doesn't change. What changes is the strength. The child grows, becomes stronger, and maybe didn't train before. So this will affect the basic technical model. But at the same time, if you understand what is affected of this basic model, you will know how that advanced model will have to develop. And as I told you, with the triple extension, all those who are still focused on that triple extension and the backside mechanics instead of frontside mechanics will very difficultly, if ever, clear, for example, or go sub 10 seconds. It doesn't work because it compromises with the ground contact. It will be the same as you have seen. Where did these triple extensions come from? It came from surfaces we didn't have, which were as hard as they are today when you talk about synthetic artificial surfaces. Force transmissions are there way better than on cinder. So the brain activity, as we said, and what the brain activity does is it helps you set up that automatized model so that then you can recall what you have repeatedly trained. So you get time and movement patterns, awareness by what you're doing, and using the neurobiomechanics to get it done. All right. So let me see if that still exists. I don't know, because I have done here a link, but I hope it works. I don't know that if it still works. It could see. Unfortunately, yeah, it doesn't always work. So I can't use sometimes, but because they don't keep this these videos very long. So I'll have to. Okay, no problem. Not a problem. Forget about it. I will just talk about it. So what this did, or what this does, it talks about performance limiting factors in the brain and the command of the quality and quantity with intensity and physical stress. Physical stress is volume, is quantity. Intensity is neuromuscular science, is neuromuscular coordination. Okay? So the quality of these limiting factors will decide on what level you are basically working, or on primary functions of that, what happens in the brain. And what we want is, we want to develop intentions. So again, I can only repeat myself. If you want faster movements, we'll work on the faster movements. If you understand what and how these faster movements can be done, you will be then steering them or controlling them on a quality basis in order to get executions, okay, executions and movements, that means time and movement patterns, under control in stress situations. So the better you control, the better you master the basics and the advanced model of these basics, the more it will be probable that you will be applying that transmission or that transition from what I do once into what I have to do repeatedly, into recalling certain activities in order to be able to deliver at a certain point. Does this make sense? Okay, so facts. Facts are what we can measure. Technology, as I said in my introduction, advances, so I can collect data. By collecting data, I have growth and opportunity. This is what I want. Having this, I now need to interpret and apply that data into what I'm doing. And for hence, I'm having to use collaboration of players. That means of those who measure. I need to tell them, I need this measurement if you measure. Or, as we are doing now through a course, we need to understand, what are we measuring? What can we take out of these measurements, and how can I take advantage of it? Remy said it at the beginning, asking the question, profiling of that genome. That means of that individual. Every individual is different. Hence, I will need to apply this knowledge differently on these individuals. You will have the performance funnel. I'll show you an example, and you have video analysis, which guide you. And will tell you then, if you want to have this as a result, this is where you have the reference, your reference. Okay? So time and movement patterns, motor behavior, intermuscular coordination are key to having or to be using time and movement patterns in the right way, and hence understanding how in biomechanics, or how biomechanics can be used as a helpful tool to improve quality in training, or by analyzing what has not gone the way I wanted in order to be able to do my adjustments and get again intent and purpose into what I want. Okay, so I will take here, for example, ground contact times. In starts, you've got 160 to 340 milliseconds. Now, if you have 160, you have a way shorter at the same force application than 340 milliseconds. In sprints, when you are at a high velocity, you are traveling at a very high velocity, you might reach somewhere towards 80 milliseconds on ground contact time. When you have hurdles, that means obstacles in between, that is a bit jeopardized. Or you will have to adapt this, and this is why we've been talking to the sprints in between, the spacings in between these hurdles, and link it to the hurdle clearance and the touchdown again behind the hurdle into that rhythmic unit. This is when you will be able to sprint, over sprint, sprint, over sprint, sprint, over sprint, as much as often as needed in order to cover that distance in a sprinting manner, and maintaining the horizontal displacement of the center of mass, or increasing the velocity of the center of mass at the beginning. and then reaching the maximum and then maintaining that and conquer negative development. That is linked, no doubt, to stride length and stride frequency. That means, you see here, 11.7 meters per second, yes, is in theory linked to a 250 to 260 stride, and about a frequency of 4.8. If jeopardizing one of these two, you will get to about 10 seconds or higher, and if you do it properly, you will get a sub 10. If you travel at the maximum velocity of 11.56, to round it up to 6, you might have a shorter stride length with a slightly lower, because you have to the stride frequency, and then you might be somewhere around 10, and so on and so forth. I won't go through all of them now, but what it tells you very clearly is that there is a link, but there is a link only if I understand. So a shorter person will never be able to run a 250 or 260 stride, but might with a 260 stride, might with a 250 stride or a 240 stride, and the higher frequency, be able maybe to go a sub 10. And we have that, for example, the Kenyan sprinter at the moment, which is around, I think, 174, 176, and still was running regularly this season under or sub 10 seconds. All right. So, any questions to what we've done at the moment and what needs clarification? So I want to give you just the opportunity to raise the questions, so that then doesn't want to work now. Okay. Sorry guys. I am stuck. Okay, here we go. All right. So anything I can give you as a feedback and clarification for what we've done. Leave it up to you. We've got 15 minutes left. So where do you need clarification, and where, or do you need sort of re-explanation of what we've said and what we went through? Any comments, any questions? You can write them.
Dr. Raf, I'm interested with the slide earlier on time and management pattern. If we have an athlete who is very weak in reaction, what would be the best solution? I mean, activity, especially a young athlete. Again, I'm dealing with a young athlete, junior athlete. So if we see that time and management pattern is the focus, the eye, and then where the reaction will be, the sensor and so on, what is the best activities to teach them? Okay,
you have now picked the one part in sprinting which affects least the performance, is the reaction time. We have been believing in the past that reaction time has a major impact, but we have seen that since the rule has changed from being allowed to do 2 full starts to 1, reaction times have become slightly longer, but the performance has not suffered. So again, reaction time has the least impact on the performance. Yes, you can improve reaction time by visual, by tactile, or by acoustic training methods or means, but be aware, or how to say, understand that this has the least effect on your performance. What is way more important is to understand the following parts in the phases. That means the drive into the first acceleration steps. That means you are converting this force application into the blocks into an acceleration, moving then into the acceleration and the pickup phase, to get then into the maximum velocity, where then you shift from pushing. And here I'm answering already the question which is raised, whether I push in the acceleration or I pull. I push because I have a lean forward and I keep that moving forward. For you guys, it might not be so clear, but imagine you have a car. The car broke down. Now you are in the middle of the road and you want to push that car on the side so that at least you do not disturb the traffic and hinder the traffic too much. The car is heavy, no matter how big or how small. The bigger, the more heavier it is, the smaller, the least, or the less heavier it is, but it still is heavy. What would you do to push that car? You would lean forward and you would push against the ground and go into a sort of an extension so that force is transmitted from your legs, from that pushing of with the legs to where you are holding the car or where you are placing your arm with the car to get that mass moving. Once that mass is moving, that pushing action becomes quicker until the car is put aside, correct? And this is how you need to understand. So the pushing action and the pushing action afterwards, once it goes, becomes less and less. So pushing faster until you are upright, and then that pushing fact goes away or fades away and is replaced with a step over mechanics to keep that momentum going and to keep velocity increasing. All right? Does this answer your question?
Yes, yeah. The worry that I have is also the first three step up from the block. Yeah, now I get it. Yeah, the right one will be pushing. Yeah.
Yeah, you can, for example, as an exercise, I will show them to you tomorrow as an exercise or after tomorrow, depending on how we'll move forward. You can a lot of exercises where you can train that behavior or that technique in proper mechanics. Because if you don't, again, do not apply force properly, you won't be able to execute that movement. So you will get straight away the feedback. It doesn't work like this. I need to do something different. All right.
Thank you.
There is a question here in the messaging box, which says, how important is strength or power or speed and strength for I guess for sprinting? That means for the different phases in the sprinting. When I talk about force applications, it gives you the impression that it's all linked to force or to strength training. No, it just says, where do my effort needs to go in order to move that mass forward? When I'm in resting position, like in the start or a 3-point start or in the starting blocks, that mass is at rest fully. And then with my movements, I start initiating that movement of that mass. So this, I need what? Strength. And I've explained it while explaining it with the pushing of the car. Once that mass is moving, I will need less and less strength to keep it moving and even to increase the velocity or the speed on that mass. That means when I train strength is only for the start and the acceleration. Once I go into that transition from start acceleration into the maximum velocity, I do not need strength anymore, but the force application remains through the speed of the leg and the touchdown. The higher, the faster, the higher the velocity, the higher the leg is moving, the speed of the leg is moving down to the ground and touching the ground, the higher is the force transmission. That means the greater is the force. Sorry, I'm talking all rubbish. The greater is the force when the foot strikes the ground. And if I am properly aligned and I've got stiff elements, the faster and the shorter the ground contact will be. So it will be linked in the speed of the leg and not on the strength so much. So again, the methods of flying sprints is very strongly dependent on how I get that mass moving so that I can make use of that mean and method in order to be able to go and increase velocity while flying, while having horizontal displacement. Did it answer your question?
Yes, it is. So, and obviously, if and this opens another debate as well. So the point to raise that question was because it's my opinion, because when I was sprinter back 20 years in subcontinent, so we would only focus on strength and strength and strength, and then the importance of plyometrics and strength speed, and there was no, information available on that time. And still, I'm struggling to educate my colleagues on like this strength and conditioning model, but that's the biggest problem I think we have in subcontinent. That's why we are not producing good level of sprinter as well.
Well, I wouldn't be as critical. What I would say is that that is a general problem because unfortunately, a lot of coaches, and with the development of the technology, that means the possibility of Googling, and Dr. Google knows a lot. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you whether good or bad, but it gives you a lot of answers to questions you raise in Google. And you have to learn to differentiate the rubbish, the BS, from the content you are getting. Content, if it is good, you can use it. And unfortunately, what happens with most of the coaches, they Google and copy. They do not reflect on whether what they've Googled makes sense or does solve the problem. They just create a new problem by purely copying it and applying it. And this is why technology, as well as it was the first of my statements, was, is it a curse or is it a blessing? It's a curse if you only copy and paste. It's a blessing if you know what to do with it, if you understand the biomechanics behind it, if you understand what are these figures, what is this measurement, what does it tell me, what does strength do? Oh, it increases strength. Okay, but what strength? Am I doing the exercise? Which muscle is working? Am I working on the muscle which is supposed to make me move faster? Yes or no? The amount of work I do, that means the quantity, the volume, or the quality of work I do. How does this match? Does it match? And if not, why not? So all of this needs to be answered, and that takes you, no doubt, into being more reflective and more critical about what you see and what you read, and that is why. So I don't believe that it is the problem is that you find on the internet a lot of as well contradictory information, and that makes it more difficult for many coaches than to say, okay, whom do I believe? Should I believe this or that? And then you pick, for whatever reason, the one or the other Google answer you got, and you will, and believing that you're doing the right thing. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Sir.
Yeah.
I'm from the Philippines, Mr. Posada, Jojo Posada. I'm just curious enough because I saw the video comparing Jason Owens to Usain Bolt. Now, I just want to ask about how do you assess the young boy from Thailand who's now so young, and he has a really, the first time I saw him in Thailand, in Vietnam SEA Games, he really ran so amazing, you know. And I just want to know how you assess this guy, because at young age, 16 years old, now maybe last week, he ran 20.619 in 200 meter. So we are talking about biomechanics and developing the strength, power, and how the length of stride. So what can you say about this young boy, sir, from at age of 16? Because we're talking about the development, the growth of the players, when he started young, we'll base it on experience, how the exposure competed. But this young boy at age 16, he really ran so amazing, you know. It's only 16 years old and he ran 20.19, which maybe last week. So, and he ran 10.1 or 19 or 2 in 100 meters. So what can you say about this guy, this young guy?
I can't tell you much because I don't know him. I didn't see him run, and I only got information today from you guys telling me that there is a 16-year-old who has these PBs. That's what I was trying to explain to you right from the beginning. Pure performances do not tell you anything about, or doesn't allow you to analyze anything if not having other parameters. That means very crucial and important is, how did he get to run 2019? How did he get, what did he do in training? Because it is easy to train talents when they are young, or to train talented young athletes with means which are not meant for the age and might block the development for the following years. But no doubt there are talents, but if you see, even Usain Bolt was not as fast as this boy at the age of 16. Now you can basically say, oh, so he will be the next world record holder. Possibly, I don't know. But if what he has done or what he has trained was beyond age-related matters, then probably his development is finished, more or less. If it is real talent, that means what has been done was age-related, but because he's a talent, he took more out of it, then his future is bright. So I can't answer that question because, as I said, I don't know. What I can do is, if I get several parameters with my analysis tools, I could be able, and I will show you tomorrow with one example from somebody I coach as well. I'm not the only one coaching him, but I coach him with a colleague. What I mean by that, so delay that answer, which I'm giving you a bit by a day, and you will get something which might answer your question a bit more or better than what I'm telling you now.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So I've got here, I see another question, that technology, as technology advances and the awareness of our natural biomechanics, how do we cope with our how do we cope with or compete against those who have access to it? It is not about having access to it. It's about getting to understand why certain things change. That means, for example, change in technical models. If you can get access to it, nowadays you've got phones. And if this is of interest to you guys, I will show you tomorrow in one presentation what I mean and how, in theory, you could get access indirectly, because you all have, for example, to a certain, I guess, no, not to a certain, you all have smartphones. That is already the first step. And so what you need to know, you don't need all of this meticulous and detailed analysis or possibilities of measurement. What only you need to do is, if I have a device like my smartphone, what can I do and how can I relate that to information or knowledge I got, for example, on a course like this? And you will very quickly see that I can give you heaps of examples. I work a lot in developing countries, and take Africa, where most of the countries do not have this sophisticated technological access, and still deliver on the highest possible level, even now on a higher level than those countries who have it. What does it tell you? It tells you, if the coaches understand what in these high developed countries is measured, they can do it in training without necessarily having it. And I will give you tomorrow the reference points. If you have, and we have them in Germany, we are in Berlin, to give you an example, to criticize us. In Berlin, we have the biggest city, is the biggest city in Germany. We have close to 6 or 5 million citizens. We have, from the unification, 2 completely equipped centers. We have 2 indoor tracks or indoor facilities. We have over, in Berlin, not in Germany, in Berlin, we have over 70 tracks fully equipped. And we have not contributed in the past 3 or 4 major games to the medal haul, if there was any, of the German team. So you see that it's not about the technology, you can have or you can access, because we can access it, is about what you do with the information, not necessarily having to have it. And that's why I've been explaining to you, and I thought that message came through, but obviously with the question now, I realized that it did not come through. It's not about you measuring, it's about you understanding what it means so that then you can apply the right means. As I told you the example, if you think a pulley system is good because it improves power, you don't have a pulley systems, you can create a similar. You can push so that you have pushing mechanics applied. You can tow truck tires. But now is the question, how long do you tow them? How heavy is that truck tire you're taking? If you understood this, you can take it. You don't need that sophisticated. So yes, I could measure it. Yes, I could, and I will show you tomorrow. But it's to understand what this information tells you to give you what you need. All right? Now, performance implications of new spikes. Here we come again. The spikes are not miracles. If your mechanics are weak and poor, the spikes won't do anything for you. They will probably enhance injury, because when the braking forces come with theoretically propelling stools, the brake you will get somewhere problems. So it's not about the spikes. It's about those who master the mechanics properly, who, yes, there might be a small advantage of the spikes, but to believe that the spikes do the performance, you are betting on the wrong horse. All right. Okay. I think to close that today's session, I will extend tomorrow and after tomorrow a bit more. Now, even after having heard certain questions which came up, to give you more practical example of that application, but I had to have an introduction a little bit more on the theory side, and then to move more and more into the practical side. But through the questions, I have already hinted and highlighted some of the practical applications linked to what I've said. All right. Ria, you want to close or
Yes.
you want me to close?
Okay. On behalf of ADC Jakarta and the participants, we would like to thank Raf Dr. Lasmo Pahani for his valuable lesson today to upgrade the coach's knowledge. So see you again tomorrow at the same time with the same Zoom ID, and for sure be punctual 2 p.m. Jakarta, Bangkok time. Okay,
right.
thank you. See you
So a
tomorrow.
nice evening to all of you. I still have my day in front of you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you,
See you
sir.
tomorrow.
Let me answer the question from Philippines.
Which one?
Puripon. It's
Oh,
Thai
yes.
printers.
Congratulations, coach.
No, that is the secret. I cannot tell you.
It's not in Michael.
Ralph always say no secret in training.
Exactly.
What?
The only
This
secret
boy-
is that there are no secrets.
Yeah, this boy
Coach,
is
if you
very
tell
weak.
that, no secret anymore. If you tell that.
This boy is very weak. He is very poor strength. He can do only 50 kilogram power clean, 80 kilogram squat, and 50 kilogram bench press. But the main thing we do is we try to correct his running mechanic. That's it.
Yeah. Nice one, coach.
Less force, but very high quality movement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will share. Yesterday's video on WhatsApp group.
You are
and you can see
applying.
how
You are
mechanically
applying
he's good is.
100% theory.
Now let's
All right.
strength training.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hi, Ma'am Ria.
Hello, bye-bye.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. George.
Hi, Ma'am Ria.
Hello, Mr. Lali.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Nice to meet you after a long time, no?
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
Hey,
See you
Coach
tomorrow.
Darby.
Mario. So see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Miss Ria.